Today we're looking at lesson 3.3 on multiplying rational numbers. And another way of thinking of rational numbers here is multiplying fractions or mixed numbers together. And that's really what we're going to be practicing in this lesson. So the first problem has us find each product, which means multiply. When you're multiplying two fractions together, there's two ways to do it. The first way would be, if you can, then you cross simplify, and if you can't, then you would just multiply the numerators and then multiply the denominators and simplify after. But here we have 2 and 4 that go into each other, so I can simplify this to 1 and 2, and then when I multiply I get 2 over 10, and that would be able to be simplified, and that could be 1/5, so that would be my answer. Now another way to do it, to get 1/5, and I'll rewrite 1/2 times 4/10, would be to just multiply in the beginning and then simplify. So 1 times 4, multiply the numerators, 2 times 10, multiply the denominators, and then simplify if we can. So 4 and 20 have 4 in common, so you would divide by 4 and you'd get 1/5. So either way, either method, simplifying before or simplifying after, will work. But the idea is, either way, you would need to multiply the numerators together and get a number, and then multiply the denominators together and get a number, and set those two up as a fraction, like we did here. Here's another example, or a couple more examples. Here, I always, and this is usually how I'm going to do the problems, I always simplify beforehand. So I'm going to look at the 5 and the 10, and you can't simplify just the numerator and denominator first. You would cross simplify. So 5 and 10 would have to need to be having something in common, which they do. They have a 5. So I would divide both by 5, and I'd get 1 at the top and then a 2 over here. And then here we can do 6 and 12, divide both by 6, and get the same results. So once we've simplified it as much as possible that way, we're going to just multiply our numerators together and multiply our denominators together. And that should be the most simplified form. Now, this one, notice they both have a negative sign. When the negative sign is in the middle there, next to the fraction bar, that means the whole fraction is considered negative. So that means if we're thinking about the rules for multiplying integers, you would have a negative times a negative. So your answer is actually going to be positive. Once you figure that out, then you can not worry about the negatives anymore and just simplify. So 9 and 3 have 3 in common, so I divide by 3. 2 and 12 have 2 in common, so I divide by 2. And we already know our answer is going to be positive, so we do 3 times 1 is 3, 6 times 1 is 6, and then we can simplify even more sometimes, and this would become 1/2. Here, again, we have 1 negative and 1 positive, so this is going to give us a negative answer. I can write that so I don't forget. Then I'm going to see if I can simplify. I can simplify the 3 by dividing by 3, and the 9 by dividing by 3. So I'm left with 6 over 33. And actually I can simplify this a little bit more by dividing by 3 to get negative 2 over 11. And that would be my final answer. Now, sometimes you have mixed numbers. When you have mixed numbers, you need to change them to improper before you multiply and simplify. That is a must. If you don't change it to improper, then you are probably going to get the wrong answer. So don't try to just do 3 times 2 and then do 3/8 times 1/3. That's not going to work. Make them into improper fractions first, and you do that by multiplying the whole number by the denominator and then adding the numerator. So I did that with the first one. I got 27/8. And here I have 2 times 3 is 6 plus 1, and that's going to be 7/3. And then I'm going to look to see if I can simplify, which I can. I can divide by 3 here. So I get 63/8. And I believe that's as simplified as I can get. Now I can write it as 63/8, that would be perfectly fine, or I can make it back into a mixed number. So 8 goes into 63 7 times, and then there is, so that's going to give us 56, so there's 7 left over. So I can write 7 7/8 as well. But either one of these answers would be considered correct. Here's another one. We have a negative times a positive, so our answer is going to be negative. I'm just going to write that in the beginning so I know. I need to make both of them mixed numbers, so I don't need to pay attention to the negatives when I'm doing this process. I have 1 times 6 is 6, plus 5 is 11, times 5 times 7 is 35, plus 1 is 36. I can simplify the 6 and the 36. And then I'm multiplying the numerators to get 66/7. And that is as simplified as I can get it. I know my answer needed to be negative 66/7, so that would be my final answer. And again, you can make this into an improper fraction if you'd like. You do that by seeing how many times the 7 goes into 66, which is 9. So I have negative 9 as my whole number. And then there is 3 left over, because 9 times 7 is 63. So then I'd have a 3 as my numerator, and 7 stays as my denominator. So either one of these would work. Here, we're asked to evaluate the expression, and they give you the values of the variables. So the first expression is x times y. So I'm going to plug in the values first. So 3/8 is x. And negative 2 and 2/9 is y. I'm going to make the mixed number into an improper fraction before I start simplifying, because they have to be in the same form for you to do anything with them. So 2 times 9 would be 18, plus 2 is 20/9, and that was negative. Now I have 1 negative and 1 positive, and I'm multiplying, so my answer is going to have to be negative. I can simplify before I start by divide by 3, divide by 3, divide by 4, divide by 4, and I left with 5 times 1 is 5/2 times 3 is 6, and it was negative, so my answer is negative 5/6. This one is 5 times x, and x is 3/8. Now if you have a whole number and you're trying to make it a fraction, we talked about making it over 1. So I'm going to do 5/1 times 3/8 to make them both in the same form. Now I can't simplify beforehand, so I'm going to just multiply my numerators together and my denominators together, and I can leave my answer either as 15/8, or I know that 8 goes into 15 once with 7 left over, or I can write it like this, 1 7/8. Either way is correct. And here's one more where you have y times z. Now y was negative 2 and 2/9 times z, which is negative 7/10. This is a negative times a negative, so my answer is definitely going to be positive, but I need to change my mixed number into an improper fraction. That's going to be 2 times 9 is 18, plus 2, so 20/9, times negative 7/10. I can cross simplify, divide by 10, and I'm left with positive 14/9, or 1 and 5/9. So either one of these would work. The last problem has us do a word problem. It's talking about the Willis Tower in Chicago, and that's about 1,450 feet. The Empire State Building in New York City is about 4/5 as tall. So you put 2 and 2 together here. The lesson is about multiplying rational numbers. We have 2 rational numbers given to us. And then we also look at the fact that it says as tall. That's going to be an indication of multiplication as well. So 4/5 is going to be times 1,450. And again, we put that over 1 when it's a whole number. We can simplify by dividing by 5. And if I divide by 5 here, I would get 290. And my denominator is 1 times 1, so it's going to be 1. And 290 times 4 gives me 1160. Now I don't need to write my answer as 1160 over 1. I can just write it as 1160. So it looks like the Empire State Building is 1,160 feet. And that concludes lesson 3.3 in pre-algebra on multiplying rational numbers.